should depict the threefold divine fire, for the fire became triple only when it entered the watery composition of the body, and the S and SH sound is precisely that produced by fire plunging into water. Shh. The yod then can be taken as representing the cosmic fire when the first fanned by the breath of God. The yod then can be taken as representing the cosmic fire when first fanned by the breath of God. Jesus is dramatized as coming, quote, with his fan in his hand, unquote, to generate heat, to mold the worlds in proper shape, and to fan into bright flame the smoldering fire of divinity in man's constitution. Shin would represent the fire, now become triple, plunging into lower levels of water, standing both for the actual water of the human body and a general symbol of matter. The three yods of the Shin have lines carrying their power down to the bottom level, where they are united in one common bar, this again intimating that the three divine aspects, spirit, soul, and mind, are all mingled as one in the body of man, as a symbol designed to depict the immersion of fiery spiritual units of consciousness in their actual baptism in the water of physical bodies. The letter form that dramatizes the actual event, and the letter sound that onomopoetically mimics the sound of fire plunging into water. This alphabet character, Shin, is certainly most eloquently suggestive. It has often been said that the SH sound is derived from the hiss of the serpent. This tradition seems more likely to have come from the ancient symbolism of fire plunging into water, symbol of soul descending into body, than from the inaudible hiss of the snake. For again, coincidental as it may seem, the creative fire was by the ancients called the serpent fire, expressly by the Egyptians the great Ureus snake, a serpent of fire. Let it be noted also, with regard to the Shin, that when a dot likely acting deputy for the yod is placed above the right side of the letter, it is pronounced as sh, but when the dot comes above the left side, it has only the sound of s. This change of position of the dot actually changes the name of the letter, for when it is above the left side, the name is not Shin, but Sin. Doubtless a thunder of protest and a charge of scholarly chicanery would greet our intimation that this left-handed name of the great divine letter is the origin and covertly carries the significance of the theological word sin. What can be adduced in some support of the suggestion is not without considerable force on that side. There is the Bible phrase, quote, the wilderness of sin, which is the same as the wilderness of Sinai, and the mount of the earth, i.e. the earth itself, as that celestial mount on which every transition of the business of human divinization takes place. A salient feature of the ancient science of truth representation was the designation of things spiritual and divine as allocated to the right side of life, and things mundane and physical as of the left side. Good lay on the right hand, evil on the left. Esotericism has always spoken of the right and left-hand path. Such books as the Zohar and other Haggadic works of the early Jewish allegorists prominently use this figurism. To go left, to stand on the left, was to miss the mark of good and truth and right. The Greek word for to sin is precisely this, hamartano, to miss the mark. The sharp distinction between the two directions has always appeared even in language with a moral connotation. The Latin word for right hand is dexter, from which we get dexterous, The French is droit, from which comes adroit. For left hand, the Latin has our word sinister. The French has gauche, from which comes our gawky. Things on the right were favorable, propitious. On the left were sinister, ill-omened. And as St. Paul's epistles, mainly Romans 7, so pointedly reveal, earth was that mount on which the divine soul, sinless in its celestial habitation, came under the dominion of sin. Know ye not, my brethren, asks the apostle, how that a man is under the law of sin and death only as long as he liveth, that is, while he is here on earth. He implies that there is no sin in heaven, for he clearly states that sin sprang to life when the soul obeys the command to incarnate. Sin can touch the soul only from the side of the body, and he says the soul goes dead under its power while here on earth until its resurrection from the dead in the course of evolution of spirit back to its divine condition, so that the earth is that mount of sin, that Mount Sinai of the Sinai of the Scriptures. But the Old Testament contains an allegory, for the story is preposterous as history, which shows the ancient writers of sacred ideological constructions using the shin-sin difference to point the moral that the soul that can pronounce the full SH sound of the letter has taken the right path and completed its evolution to divinity, while the one that can enunciate only the S sound has taken the left-hand path to sin and must return to earth, the land of death, for further schooling in life. The guards at the Jordan fords were instructed to subject the Ephraimites on the east side of Jordan who wished to cross to enter the Holy Land, not of Judea, but of spiritual consciousness, to a simple test. Require each man who crosses to pronounce the key word Shibboleth. But says the story, in every case he said Sibboleth. The direful result was that 42,000 Ephraimites who could not convert the S indicating sin into the divine sh were put to the sword on one day. They were still on the left-hand path of sin, not ready to cross the river into the land of spiritual blessedness. It seems worthy of remark that not in 20 centuries has the easy esoteric unraveling of this simple and evident cryptogram come through to the intelligence of any scholar. How a Hebrew exegetist could long miss it is not comprehensible. Furthermore, how it could have been mistaken for history, for an actual event, is still far more incomprehensible. Yet fundamentalists still claim that it happened. If you assert that history was only a few thousand years ago, a run of miracles, of course it neither needs nor can have an explanation. One is just to gape in awe at the Lord's wondrous doings and be sanctified of soul, if stultified of mind. If the S and SH sounds carried the intimation of fire plunging into water, a special use of these letters in the old Egyptian hieroglyph language seems to fall into conformity with the same idea. The SSH was consistently prefixed to verbs to express the idea of setting off the action which the verb indicated, to give the action its initial push, or start, as it were. The likelihood of the origin of this usage from the basic fire going into water thesis will not so hastily be scouted if it is reflected that in the creation no real beginning in the visible worlds can have been made until the fire of spirit potency has radiated forth from the divine thought and impregnated the sea of matter, water. The visible and audible work of creation starts only when the two nodes of being approach each other and establish testimonial relation between themselves. As many a scientific speculator has predicted, the early stages of Earth's formation brought together the chemical elements of fiery gases and humid vapors. The precipitates from the mixture finally forming the first earthly and mineral substances. Those early periods might, in the Egyptian sense, be termed the hissing or SH stage of planetary evolution. An example of the inceptive force of the S in the hieroglyphs is seen in the Egyptian word MNKH, menk, which as adjective means firm, stable, but made into a verb it becomes SMNKH, smenk, meaning to make firm, stabilize, establish. It is also likely that in this word menk we have another prime example of the MN reference. In relation to its meaning of firmness and stability, it is to be recalled that a passage from the Egyptian Book of the Dead described the world of life on earth as the place of establishing forever. Also in the MN connection, it is highly significant that the Egyptian name for this lower region, the underworld or netherworld of their system, was Amenta, composed of the name of the god Amenta and Ta, meaning earth. Also significant is the name of this god, made up of the A and the M and the N, for he was called the god in hiding, and his hieroglyph is a god seated under a canopy. Obviously, he then is the personification of the divine nature hidden under the canopy of our mortal flesh. All this should be a specific guiding datum for philosophical science, inasmuch as orthodox theology has loaded the evolutionary marshland or reed sea of the earthly, watery human body with heavy contumely, as the place where only fleeting ephemeral influences affect, if not afflict, the soul with evil. That is, on the contrary, the place where the soul establishes forever its grounding in fundamental realities, is a tenet of the sacred and secret wisdom of the Egyptian sages, which must be made one of the chief stones in the new temple of rational religion now in process of building. The S prefix to MNKH adds the starting forces that brings the firm establishing to actuality, that sets it to work. It is hardly unlikely that the very long run of English verbs which begin with S or SH carry the inceptive or initiating force of the letter. Through speculation or this sort cannot be asserted with too much certainty, in such words as start, step, slide, shake, skip, skate, slip, sink, stir, sneak, smite, spur, shout, scream, stamp, stand, spit, slap, shoot, speak, sprint, spurn, scoff, slay, spill, sift, and scores more. Massey traces even the great name of mystery, the Sphinx, from the Ankh stem, preceded by the demonstrative adjective p, this, the, that, and the starting s, thus spankh, spank. Massey was well versed in the